Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio, your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Howdy y'all, Reverend Laughlin here on the Corner Bookstore on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. Today I have a great guest. He's been here before and I look forward to continuing our conversation. Let me just tell you, I have a book coming out very shortly called Aging Sucks. And it really goes into a lot of technical detail as to why we age, why we stay healthy, why we get sick, how the pathways of disease. Anyway, I set the date of July 4th for my release. I started writing the book last Sunday. And I've gotten, about a third of the book done so far. I've been very, very active in that. But I'm super excited about it because it's just really and truly starting to make things work for me. As far as I wrote a book like this 10 years ago, I'm now updating it for everything that's out there. That's probably enough about me for right now. I want to go ahead and get to our guest, Sebastien de Castell. Please join me, Sebastien, up here on stage.
Hi there.
I hope I didn't destroy your last name there. Castell?
De Castell. There's no wrong way to pronounce it.
Okay. I get people mispronouncing my name all the time, so I'm very, very attentive to that. You were telling me just before the show, I was looking up on your website, it said 14 languages. Then all of a sudden you put in there 15 languages. You said, oh, okay, and soon to be in Arabic. So when did you start changing? When did you start adding languages to your books?
So it started with my first book. So one of the interesting things when you're traditionally published, so, you write a manuscript, you have a literary agent, a publisher says, okay, we want to buy a series from you. You sign a book contract. Sometimes one of those things will include, they will buy different rights and they'll go, okay, well, we want the rights to hardback and paperback and audiobook and ebook, those kind of things. But they also will sometimes say, well, we also want the translation rights. And then what they do is they then try to sell the translation rights to different markets, different countries. And if publishers there buy it, then the author gets paid a percentage of whatever the main publisher gets paid. So in my case, it's an 80-20 split. So I get 80% of whatever they get sent, which is much better than most other types of situations. And so with Trader's Blade, my first book, which came out in 2014, that book was a German publisher bought the rights for all 4 books in German, and then Canada bought Canadian rights separately, and then France bought some rights, and then places like Bulgaria and Spain and Russia and various sort of places. And so I was quite lucky because as an author, if you get the chance to sort of break into other markets, then they will tend to buy more of your other books. And so in a way, the beauty of it is you can have a single book that actually manifests as, in a dozen different languages. So it's been published, it has 12 different versions of it published out there, as well as ebook and audio and things like that. It's the same with film and television. It's just another set of rights that either your literary agent or your publisher will sometimes go and sell. And so that's what happened to me. And so sometimes when, for example, the Greatcoats books, which was my first big swashbuckling fantasy series, wasn't bought by Russia at first, but Spellslinger, my YA fantasy series, was, and then it became successful there. So then they bought the Greatcoats. So it's wonderful as an author, right? Because it means you're reaching people all over the world in their language.
So very interesting. So it's almost like a cascading feature that, let's say German does it and somebody knows, well, we'd like to have this in French or Dutch or whatever else. And it just it's not self-perpetuating. but the interest is there, success is shown, and somebody else is up. Maybe we need it in Turkish too, or Arabic or whatever.
Yeah, and one of the funny things, of course, as from the standpoint of just being an author, is you really have no idea in what markets your books will end up being popular. So, for example, the Spellslinger series, which is a young adult magical fantasy series, is tremendously popular in the Czech Republic, and it's also tremendously popular in Hebrew, so in Israel, and in France, but not as popular in Denmark, for example, in Danish or other places. And sometimes you run into interesting phenomenon where your first book sells really well, as mine did in the Netherlands. But the problem is, in lots of other parts of the world, people speak multiple languages, so they see your book first in their home language, but then they don't want to wait for the translation, so they start reading the rest of the series in English. So then your English publisher's happy because those sales are up, but the Danish publisher or the Dutch publisher might be sort of go, oh, we're losing out on sales because we can't translate fast enough compared to how the English books are coming out, because those don't need to be translated; they get published faster.
Okay, so your first book was in 2014, 12 years ago.
Yep.
How long did it take to write that first book?
Well, this is a very odd story because I had been thinking about that story for a long time. When I would go running, I'm a terrible jogger and I get incredibly bored. And so I would kind of entertain myself by telling myself this story. I had this idea about this swashbuckling character and who was super idealistic, but everything that he believed in seemed to have turned out wrong. So the king that helped create the Greatcoats, this order of traveling magistrates who would sort of go on circuits around the country and hear cases and sometimes have to fight duels in order to enforce verdicts. And it's all based around an actual historical phenomenon, which was the 12th century justices itinerant in England, who would go around and hear cases. They didn't fight a lot of sword duels. But that's also where, for example, American circuit courts came from. Those used to be a judge traveling around on a circuit with lawyers to hear cases, so that you would have a legal system that functioned across the country and not just in large cities. And so I would sort of tell myself bits of the story, and I had no real idea what I was going to do with it. And then all of a sudden in 2006, there's a thing called the 3-day novel writing contest. And it happens every year. It's been around for, 45, 47 years now. And I literally signed up for it the day before it was starting. And usually people have all these outlines and notes, and they start at midnight and they write for 3 days, and they try to write like 10 or 15 or 20,000 words. I literally went to bed, got up at 7 a.m. the next morning, and then I had 3 different stories I was thinking of trying, and I ended up picking this one. And over the course of those 3 days, even while I had a gig as a musician, I had to play a wedding with a wedding band. I ended up writing 44,000 words. I wrote this sort of complete, although short, version of this novel. And so, in a sense, that first draft, which I still have, was written in 3 days. A few years later, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna revise this. So I spent some time sort of revising it. It became 2.5 times the length. So 44,000 words is about 150 or 120 pages or so, or something like that of a hardback. It ended up being like 360 pages, and then got very, very lucky and got a great literary agent, and then a wonderful publisher for that first series. So it's always hard to say how long a book takes, but for me, that first draft was really where the essence of the story is. I can still go back and look at it and go, almost all of that is actually in the final version of that book.
Okay, the reason I asked you is you wrote the first one of that series. I think it's 4 books. How, comparatively speaking, did the last one go as easily?
Oh no, absolutely not. The fourth book was not just the hardest book I'd ever written, and it's a quartet, so that was the completion of that series. It wasn't just the hardest book I'd ever written. It was the hardest thing I'd ever tried to do in my life. It's very challenging, especially if you have a series that becomes popular. The pressure to do better, to write a better next book, to deliver a satisfying conclusion to a series, becomes incredibly strong. And it's not like your publisher or your agent or other people. It's actually more readers, because I'm lucky to get lots of wonderful fan mail from readers. And they would say, oh, I love Falco so much. Will this happen? I hope this happens. I still get letters from people saying I was at a tough point in my life, and those books helped me get sort of through this. Or, I am dyslexic. I stopped reading, and then somebody gave this to me, and then those are all wonderful things. Like every, writer, you want to have a positive effect on people's lives, but they create a kind of internal pressure. And so by the time I was writing Tyrant's Throne, I was just exceedingly nervous that I wasn't going to, as they say, stick the landing. In fact, I was very lucky. I was at a convention and I was doing a signing, and I was next to David Gerald, who is a grandmaster of fantasy and science fiction, and a really nice guy. And I said to him, I'm writing this final book in this series. How do you tell when you're doing it right? And he said, the end of a series, it comes when your characters have said all that they have to say. And so just ask yourself, what do your characters still need to say? And create the story that lets them do that. And that little nugget of wisdom was really helpful for me in navigating it. And honestly, I recently reread Tyrant's Throne, and I was surprised how affected I was by it. Which should be how it is, right? You write the book you most want to read, but often, that's not the case. Writers just find the errors. But I was able to find the things about it that I loved that made me want to write it so much, and I attribute a lot of that to David Gerald's very helpful advice.
That's actually some really significant advice when you get down to it.
Yeah, absolutely. The funny thing about writing advice is I sometimes will tell people, it's all excellent and it's all garbage. And what I mean by that is it's all excellent because if you look at any given piece of writing advice on its own, it probably makes perfect sense. But if you're not at the place where that advice is meaningful, then it has no relevance to you. It becomes sort of garbage. It's a distraction. Sorry. Sometimes
it's so hard to actually start. You have the story in your mind. And I coach people periodically, and I say, start where your passion is at. You don't have to start at chapter 1, start chapter 5 if that's where it's at. Because once you get started, it's a whole lot easier once you're already in the movement, that motion is going. But that getting started sometimes is very, very difficult.
That is excellent advice. And I'm smiling because recently I've been writing, and I'm just finishing up Malevolent 9, which is the third book in the Malevolent 7 series, Malevolent 7 was a book that came out in 2023 and became vastly more popular than any of us expected. I had not even written it for publication. I had written it just for myself. I was just writing a book to kind of clear out all the cobwebs and not follow anybody's rules, and it's going to be full of swearing, and it's got 12 different magic systems, and I was not going to explain any of them, and it was just wizards going around blowing things up. And suddenly this book became very popular. And so they wanted 2 sequels. And the last one, the trilogy, is Malevolent 9. And I've never struggled so hard to write a book that I can recall, just to get started. And I tried to start from where I thought I should start. This is where this book, should begin logically based on all of the craft stuff I know. And I just immediately felt this sense of, I am writing something that isn't very meaningful to me. So how is it ever going to be meaningful to readers? And oddly, I then, just when I was thinking, I may have to tell the publishers, I don't know if I can deliver this book or want to do this book. I got lucky and stumbled upon the exact advice that you just gave, Red, which was like, write your passion. And so the one thing I knew that I desperately wanted about this book was the epilogue. So I always knew how this series would end, where these characters would end up. And so the first thing I did was I just went, I'm just going to write the epilogue of the book. And I wrote it as if it was, literally about to be published that way. And I was like, this feels good. And then I was like, okay, but I can't go back to the beginning because I still don't know how I want to start this. And so I thought, well, what do I care about? And so I started writing scenes that had no magic, no sort of fantasy stuff. They were relationship scenes. It's Cade Ombra is the main character in that series, and it's Cade and this woman that he desperately wants to marry. But he's led a life of the fairly strange life as a mercenary war mage, going around and blowing up castles and things like that. And so he has sort of all the emotional maturity of a 13-year-old boy. And she has a son. And so the scene opens up literally with they're in bed together, and her son runs in the room and declares he wants to grow up to be a vampire kangaroo. And so I would write that scene. And so that's what I did was I started writing the scenes where I thought, this is what I care about in the story. And that helped me then find the actual structure and the outline, and to be able to then make every chapter something that I care about.
Well, I'm glad I was able to help you.
It was a psychic phenomenon, but
well, the characters are the same throughout your series. Is that a fairly good statement?
So within any given series, it will usually have, a main character or main characters, and they will continue. The only exception, it's funny that you bring that up, is my latest series, which is called The Court of Shadows. And The Court of Shadows is set in the world of the Greatcoats. So after the fourth Greatcoat book came out, tons of people sort of wanted more Greatcoats books. But as I mentioned before, David Gerald's great advice, your series is over when the characters have said all they need to say. I was like, well, they've said all they need to say. And so at first I thought, well, I'll create new characters that will fit inside of that sort of realm. But then I thought, well, no, then I'm sort of setting myself for having to write 4 books around a character. And so what I wanted to do was actually write standalones within that world that would all link. So these characters that don't know each other are all encountering different parts of this threat, so that then there could be a big team up book, sort of like the way the Marvel movies used to work, where you have individual sort of Avengers movies, superhero movies, and then they come together in a sort of an Avengers team up. And that was incredibly satisfying. That's been incredibly satisfying for me, because it allows me to really explore characters in depth, but not feel as if I have to set everybody up for 4 books. Because as a reader, I've found over the last 5-10 years, I actually sometimes just prefer a story that is complete inside of one book and doesn't make you feel like, oh, well, now I have to sit and wait a year until book 2 comes out. And so this one here, Our Lady of Blades, is my latest book, and someone who's never read the Greatcoats could pick this up, and someone who's never read any of the other books in the Court of Shadows saga can pick this book up first and then move to the others, and there's no particular order. So that's been really satisfying.
You intrigued me earlier when you said more swearing in one of your books. Do you actually use some of the swearing 800 years ago that was common? And how did you go about finding out how did they swear back then?
So, well, we have lots of good information about that. I minored in history in university, and my graduate work was all in history. But one of the things you have to be careful of, especially when you're writing fantasy, is you don't want to just basically lift from a particular historical period in a particular cultural context in our world, and then sort of take the parts you like. And I think N.K. Jemisin has a great way of describing this. You don't want to just take somebody's culture and then file off the serial numbers and pretend it's yours. And so one of the things that I often really enjoy about the process of writing fantasy novels is finding the parts of the culture that I actually want to create myself. And interestingly enough, the first thing I came across when I was writing Traitor's Blade was I needed the characters to swear, because these are it's a sort of Three Musketeers meets Game of Thrones kind of story. So if somebody loves the Three Musketeers and they love Game of Thrones, they're going to love Traitor's Blade and the Greatcoat series, or hopefully they will. But I wanted them to swear, and I was trying to think, how do I want these people to swear? Because I don't want to just put a lot of conventional swear words in. And I used to work as a traveling musician, and I play all these small towns, these small bars, and in between sets, I'd listen to people talking, and you'd always hear people talk with a certain rhythm And, it'd be two guys sitting at a table drinking beers. And one guy goes, so, you're going to come out for the game this weekend? I was like, no, I can't. We got the in-laws. Saint Martha, who put 3 kids through college, but still, had a degree herself or something. And that rhythm of saint someone who's somebody. And so I started putting that in the book. The way that they swear is they invoke the saints' names, but the saints, instead of being like, Saint Patrick or something, would be Saint Zagev, who sings for tears, or Saint Marta, who walks the waves, or Saint Anlas, who remembers all. And so when they're swearing, they're sort of invoking a saint that happens to apply to the situation that they're in. And so that was great for me because it gave me a kind of a language to play with when I wanted my characters to be vulgar without having to just constantly use all of our conventional swear words or sort of historical ones that I didn't necessarily have a direct connection to. But the interesting phenomenon is when the Greatcoat series sold, so when Traders Blade, I had the manuscript, my agent sent it out. I got a 4-book deal from a world rights publisher in the UK, who I'm still with sometimes for some books. And then it was also bought separately for Canada by Penguin. And at the same convention, I met both editors, my UK editor who had acquired it and my Canadian editor. And I'd asked them, what made you, what drew you to the book? And they said, the voice. And I love the depth of the world and how rich it is. For example, the saints, there's so much detail about the saints. And I thought that was so funny because there's no detail about the saints in the first book, like virtually none. I literally had to come up with it all for book 3, Saint's Blood, because I wanted to sort of solve that. But it was because the swearing involved the saints and because it was so fluid and inside the way people lived their lives and talked in that world, it evoked a much larger world. And so sometimes swearing as a piece of language or any kind of piece of language allows you to create the sense of a much richer world.
Interesting. We're running a little bit late on our commercial break, but that's fine. We're pretty much in control of the program, so we do what we want. But we do need to go to commercial break. So when we come back, I want to kind of pivot off just very, very slightly. And I'm looking at those swords over your right shoulder. And we mentioned backstage about you doing some fencing. So why don't we take it down that road when we come back from the commercial break, okay?
Sounds good.
Hey, you. Psst. Yes, you. Watching this right now. Are you creating content, a blog, a podcast, a newsletter, going live on Instagram or TikTok, and still not seeing real visibility or growth? Here's why. Anyone can post, anyone can go live, but not everyone is positioned to be taken seriously. Right now, people are going to YouTube to search for experts, for answers, for credibility. So while you're putting in the work, someone else is being seen as the authority. Not because they know more, because they're positioned better. Now imagine this. Your own professionally produced TV show, marketed, distributed, optimized with SEO so people can actually find you. Not just seen, but searchable, discoverable, positioned. You're trained, you're coached, you're guided. No experience necessary, but you do have to be coachable, because this is about stepping into a higher level. This isn't about doing more, it's about doing it right. We've already built the platform, 2 YouTube channels, a global audience, a Silver Creator Award. So the question is, how much longer are you going to rely on temporary visibility when you could be building real authority? If you're ready to be seen differently, go to usaglobaltv.com and apply to host your own show. This is for individuals who are serious about investing in their visibility, their credibility, and their growth. If that's you, we're ready. USA Global TV and Radio, where your voice becomes your platform. Executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Videographer, Paul Garcia. Voiceover, Ed Vargas. All rights reserved. This production is the exclusive property of the USA Global TV and Radio and may not be reproduced, distributed, or used without written permission.
Trevor Laughlin here. We're on the Corner Bookstore on the USA Global TV and Radio Network, and my guest today is Sebastien de Castell. Sebastien, please join me back up here on stage.
Thanks again.
Just before break, I wanted to go down that road of fencing because that's something that we talked about the last time we were on the show together. And you were saying, well, since then I've done this and this, so why don't we take that back to what you were telling us earlier, because I just found that to be a fascinating story. So please.
Yeah, you know, so many of my books feature duels and sword fighting. There's an entire sort of system of judicial duels in Our Lady Blades, which is part of why I want to write it. So there's always a lot. Swords have always played a key role in a lot of my writing. And I used to fence a long time ago, and then after that I choreographed sword fights for plays and things like that. But I sort of haven't been doing it for a while, which is always strange because, you know, when I do author events, I end up getting introduced as, you know, like as a swordsman or things like that. And I was like, well, no, I don't do it enough. And so recently I decided to take up fencing again, just foil fencing, which is, you know, most of the time if you take up fencing, a lot of the time in North America, you'll find a school or community center courses or things like that. And they sort of start you on foil, which is one of the 3 Olympic fencing weapons. And then they'll very quickly move you on to épée, and they'll very quickly get you doing bouts and things like that. I joined this school that I really appreciate. It's called Renaissance Fencing here. And it's part of this lineage that sort of dates back to, you know, quite a long ways back. And most recently to what's called the Martinez Academy. But the instructor, Joseph Lai, is this, you know, really super talented fencer. And what I love about this is it's a style of fencing that requires absolute precision. You know, like you spend the first 3 weeks just learning how to come into en garde. And then you spend the next couple of them how to stay in en garde properly while you're moving forwards and backwards or extending the weapon. No bouts, no practice bouts. You know, the last time I took up fencing, you know, 20 years ago, I remember, you know, I think I had one class, and then suddenly I was doing bouts every week. And so it's really delightful, because one of the interesting things I've been noticing lately as you get older is sometimes one of the things we drop is precision in our movements. You know, we get accustomed to, you know, slumping into the couch or you know, walking whatever's easy, the way that's easiest for us, or, you know, not having to do really, really fine detailed things. And I'm not the kind of person that likes to, you know, do watercolor painting or other things that would require that finesse. But this fencing style, where you have to move with absolute precision, your weight always has to be in the right place, your posture always has to be right. I just find absolutely entrancing. Like, you know, me 20 years ago would have been probably bored and complaining, like, why am I not getting to, like, you know, stab people fast enough? But me now is just constantly amazed. As it's so wonderful to spend, you know, a few hours a week just having to be really precise. And the beauty of swords as a historical artifact is that they are fundamentally exceedingly precise weapons. Even when we see in the movie, we see someone with a long sword, like a big old sort of, you know, medieval looking sword, and they're like hacking and slashing with it. In real life, of course, that wasn't the case at all. The movements have to be incredibly precise, because you're trying to stay alive. You have to do what we call, you know, closing the line to protect yourself, and then, you know, intercepting or getting through the line of your opponent. And the geometry of that is exhaustive. I have a really good friend of mine, Christian Cameron, who's he's a historical adventure author and a fantasy author, and he is much more of a sort of a swordsman than me. But you know, the people that get really into it will study all of these ancient manuscripts, like from the 15th century, 14th century, even farther back. So yeah, I recommend it for everyone. It's a really wonderful way to kind of get in tune with your body. It's almost, my wife used to do ballet, and so sometimes when I'm going, look at this weird move, and she'd be like, well, that's actually related to ballet. I really love that it gives an opportunity. If you're someone who's sort of like, well, you know, I'm 58, I don't think I want to take up ballet, but you can take up this kind of fencing if you can find a school that teaches with that precision.
How long does it take you to generally become proficient, say, at épée or foil or whatever?
That's a really interesting question. It really depends on the school that you're in and the standard that they follow. In this one, it seems like it's going to take me forever. Because, you know, it's, you know, again, you know, I haven't fenced a bout in school. I used to fence like 15, 20 bouts, you know, a night when I was fencing épée. So I would guess it's going to take me, I started in January, it's probably going to take me a year to reach the point where I would be, feeling remote, where my instructor would judge me sufficiently prepared to actually fence bouts. But that's the thing that's strange about it, and that's the thing that feels so kind of wonderful and wondrous about it for me, is that I'm not finding myself going, oh, I wish, why aren't I doing this? I want to just throw myself. I want to prove I'm good, right? Sometimes you can just pause and appreciate the notion of, hey, my body is capable of a higher level of precise, elegant, graceful movement than I usually allow it to do, and to have an opportunity to be able to do that, is I think a really wonderful thing. You were talking at the opening about your upcoming book about aging, and one of the things that I've found, as in my 50s, which have been better than any other decade of my life, and I felt generally better than any other decade of my life, is that often when I have friends where they're sort of complaining about one thing or another, it's always because they let something go, right? They went, oh, I hurt my leg, 10 years ago, and so I just didn't really deal with it, and so now I kind of walk with a bit of a limp, or it's always sore and this way. So I'm the opposite. I will always try to, if anything happens, I'll go see my physio and I'll make sure I do the exercise, and because I just love that feeling of being able to do stuff. And that's where fencing fits into that for me. It's really, really good for forcing you to be graceful and elegant. And I think that's something that can be good for all of us.
You have the books that are out there, and they're way back when, and you have editors and things that help it. Do you use AI at all for any kind of just trying to get some starting point for something new, or to get some clarity?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because I've been on some panels recently about AI specifically. So the thing I most observe about AI from the standpoint of people using it to write, or specifically people using it to generate text. So you're sort of going, I'm really having trouble with my opening chapter of a book. Maybe I'll get AI to do it. Is that AI steals from you far more than it gives back to you. So what you lose from not having written that chapter yourself, not having gone through the journey of, I don't know what to write, I want this to be good, what does good mean for this, what's this character want to do? If you bypass that journey, I think everything will you'll lose a lot of the reason for writing in the first place. Because fundamentally we write, to express ourselves. Even people, I see authors sometimes, and they'll sort of say, hey, I'm just in the entertainment business. I give people what they like, blah, blah, blah. And that may be true to one degree or another for different people, but I just, pulp authors that we often look back on, the Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett, people like that, they were fantastic writers, and they were very specific about what they were doing. And so AI, when people try to use it for text generation or to speed up the writing process, I don't think it's very good for that. I think what it is very good for, and this is actually what it started as in this most recent iteration, is these sort of chatbots, which have dubious social value in most areas. But they are very nice brainstorming partners, in the sense that the perfect brainstorming partner for an author isn't somebody who comes up with the ideas. It's somebody who listens to your terrible ideas and then goes, well, what about this? And you go, no, that's stupid, but it makes me think about this other thing. And so I've played with AI in that context, because it has the virtue of being incredibly patient. You can talk to it about an idea for, hours and hours and hours, but really all you're doing and all it's doing is reflecting certain things back to you. And it's just giving you that slowing down of your thought process, that pause to think through your own ideas and to find what works for you. So I think, for me, it's not, I used to do a little test with AI with the different versions. I'd go, write an opening chapter in the style of Sebastien de Castell to see what it knew about me. And I'd always be sort of halfway impressed and halfway think it's terrible. But it would never be, what I would write. So for me, I don't use it for that. One of the things it is very good for, though, is as a sort of a note-taking or story Bible tool. So, one of the things that happens to me is, the 4 Greatcoats books, that occupies, 650,000 words. There's, hundreds of characters come and go and descriptions and things like that. if I have to sit there and go, oh my God, I don't remember the first time this character appears, or I don't remember the eye color of this character, I don't remember if I ever mentioned the type of sword this character uses. Tools like Notebook LM from Google will allow you to upload what it calls sources. You go, these are my 4 sources, and that's all it's going to look at. And then you can ask it things like, find the 10 characters who are most often referenced, or give me a list of characters whose hair color is never mentioned. And it will do that. And that is a very useful tool. So as an assistant, I think it can be a helpful tool. I think as a writing partner, for me, much less so.
Okay, so for brainstorming, great. For writing, use it or lose it. And there are some that are very well adaptable, such as Notebook LM. That's something I just picked up recently, and I'm trying to break in a new AI, and I'm having hair pulling opportunities because you're not listening to what I'm asking you, and I'm blaming myself because I'm not being specific in my prompts. I have one very well trained AI, but for what I want to do, I want to have 3 of them competing against each other because I'm doing research at the cellular level in the body, and I want to have something accurate and something that has the ability. I have a citation here. It says this, we agree at PubMed or National Institute of Health or whatever. So anyway, we're getting toward the end of the show, and I don't want to shortcut you with regard to how do people get in touch with you if you have any speaking opportunities? How do people buy your books? Anything at all do you think is important? Why don't we go ahead and start that now?
Sure. So the best way to find me is on my website, which is www.decastell.com. That's DECASTELL. You can also find me on, Twitter or X and Instagram and Facebook probably. But really, people that want to reach out to me under the author link on my website, there's a contact page. I read every email. I reply to every email. Sometimes it takes a while. Actually, it's on the main page. It's right on the front page. And in terms of where I'm going to be, I'm doing a lot of interviews. I've just wrapped up a bunch of touring, and I did a ton of touring last year. So I'm trying to give myself time for writing this year. But I'll be at the Casey County Comic Convention in Kentucky. Of all places, on I think May 16th, 17th, and they were very kind to fly me out there. So I'm looking forward to that because I've never been to Kentucky before. And then I'll be at Baca Phoenix Books in Toronto on May 19th, and that should be quite a fun experience because I think I'll be doing that event with my friend Christian Cameron, and it's always a bit of a banter fest with the 2 of us. And then in terms of finding the books are in, all the typical bookstores, Barnes & Noble in the States, Waterstones in the UK, Chapters Indigo in Canada. But also, I always encourage people to go to your local indie bookstore because even if they don't stock it, they can usually get it in for you. If people want signed editions, the White Dwarf Books here in Vancouver, they will sell you the book and ship it out to you, and I will go over there and sign it and personalize it for people. So I'm always happy to do that. I do that for free. And then if people can't afford to have books shipped from Canada, they can get book plates on my website. But pretty easy to find, and always happy to hear from readers.
Okay, all your books audio also?
Oh yeah, every one of my books is in audio, including even the short stories on my website that people can buy for 99 cents. In ebook, I think it's $1.99 in audio. So yeah, I always try to do it right, and I'm really lucky. I have the my favorite audiobook narrators do my books, which is Joe Jameson, who does all the Great Coats and the Spellslinger books, and Kristen Atherton, who does the Argosy series and now Our Lady of Blades. And I absolutely love their performances. The thing a lot of people don't realize about audiobook narrators is if they're true voice actors, if they're true performers, they will add an interpretive layer on top of that text. They're not just reading it, they're performing it. And so one of my favorite things to do and I'm going to be doing this for Our Lady of Blades soon, is getting to listen to the audiobook, because it's like someone else telling me their interpretation of one of my stories. And I always love their performances.
Sebastien, thank you so very much. I look forward to us connecting again in the future. We're getting ready to end the show here very quickly. If you're watching the show today on YouTube, please consider subscribing. to USA Global TV and Radio Network, or Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, also a YouTube channel. My next show is called The Wise Ones, and it'll be starting in 20 minutes. And I have another show after that called Talking Heads, and I'll be talking about what are the real drivers of aging and what control do you have over it. I am now at that point in time where I need to prepare for my next show, so I'm going to say adios, and we'll catch you all next week. Bye now.
How much of your value have you been giving away? Saying yes when the answer should have been no? Lowering your price to secure the opportunity? Giving more while receiving less? Over time, it adds up. Until one moment brings clarity, you've been giving away your value. This is not about working harder. This is not about doing more. It's about boundaries. It's about pricing. It's about respect. From Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck comes a direct and necessary message. Stop over-delivering. Stop underpricing your expertise. Stop negotiating against yourself. Because when you recognize your value, everything changes. Stop giving away your value. Boundaries, pricing, and the business of respect. Available now wherever fine books are sold and on Amazon. A film by USA Global TV and Radio. Executive producer Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Videographer and cinematic production Paul Garcia. Voiceover by Ed Wargas. Stop giving it away. Start owning it.
In a quiet seaside town in Greece, where sunlight warms the stone paths and the sea whispers nearby, a new adventure begins. Lady Ella and her brother Lord Jack have arrived with an important mission: to teach kindness, patience, and the power of listening. In a hidden alley, a group of forgotten cats feel unseen and unheard, lost in silence and growing misunderstandings, until someone finally takes the time to truly listen. Because when we listen from the heart, loneliness softens, kindness grows, and new friendships begin. This is Book 10 of The Amazing Adventures of Lady Ella, the Listening Mentor book series. Find all Dr. Kerbeck's books on Amazon and in fine bookstores worldwide.
My Tummy Hurts by Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Meet Jackie. She loves recess, running with friends and laughing on the playground. At school, Jackie tries to play like she always does, but suddenly the pain comes back. Lately, something feels different and her tummy hurts, sometimes a little and sometimes a lot. With the help of a caring teacher, a nurse, her mom, and a kind doctor, Jackie begins to understand what her body is trying to tell her. Sometimes tummy pain is more than a simple bellyache. Some children live with conditions like ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease. Jackie listens to her body. She asks for help. She knows she's not alone. And Jackie finds her way back to running, laughing, and being herself. My Tummy Hurts, a kid's guide to bellyaches and bathroom troubles by Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, available on Amazon and in fine bookstores around the world.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.